Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Sharp Weekly. In this video, I'm going to show you that how you can implement delay to delete functionality in your application. Now, this particular functionality is very similar to the one that you find in the Reminders app. So let's see what happens when I try to delete something or mark as completed. If I'm going to go ahead and select wash the car, you can see that it doesn't really remove it instantly from the list. I still have a couple of seconds where I can change my decision and uncheck this. But what if I don't uncheck it and I just do wash the car and then eventually it will be deleted or removed? So how do we implement this functionality into our own application? Let's go ahead and take a look at it. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is to make sure that we are adding or displaying items in a list. So I'm going to go ahead and create a list of items. And you can see these items are simply item 1, item 2, and so on. It doesn't really matter in our case. Next, since we want to display a list, I'm just going to go ahead and use a list, provide in the items, provide an identifier over here, which can be self because it is string items, which are hashable. We will get the item and we will go ahead and display the actual item, which is simply a string value item 1, item 2. Okay, that looks fine. Let's go ahead and change this to a little bit to using a plain list style. There we go. Now we also need to have a checkbox or a circle that can, when it's checked, then we can say that it is checked. Then we can visually say it is checked. Just like in our Reminders application, we are trying to create this part now. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go ahead and put the text inside a h-stack. And one of the great things you can do in order to create a checkbox is to use a system name and provide a particular system name, which in this can be circle. You can see that as soon as I put a circle, you can see over here that it is now displaying a circle. So this is pretty cool. Now the other thing that we want to do is we want to make it tappable, so you can actually tap on it. So I'm going to say on tap gesture. And whenever we tap on a particular circle, we are going to get the selected item. And that item, we're going to set it into a different state property called selected item. So now I can go into my on tap gesture and I can say selected item. If the selected item is equals to nil, then we're going to set the item. If it is not, then we're just going to set it to nil. All right. Okay. So now we are setting the selected item. That is fine. Based on the selected item, you need to change this into the selected item, meaning the one that is being selected. So let's go over here into the image and we will say selected item is if it's equals to the item, then we will go ahead and use some sort of a different icon, which in this case can be circle.inset.filled, and otherwise we're going to use a circle. Let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. So you can already see it is working pretty good, right? When we select an item, it gets selected and it displays it as selected. One other thing that we need to do is when you're selecting an item might be that changing the opacity of the text itself. So we can actually do that simply by adding the opacity modifier, and based on the selected item, we can change the opacity from 0.4 to 1.0. Great. All right, so our next task is to actually remove the item. All right, so we have the selected item whenever any person taps on the image. So we get the selected item, that's great. And this particular selected item is an optional. So probably it would be a good idea to go ahead and unwrap it. So we're going to unwrap that. And if I want to remove it, then I can just filter it out. That's one of the techniques of removing something from a list, that I can simply go ahead and use the array filter and I can go ahead and simply filter it out. So I can say, if this is not equal to the selected item, then go ahead and give me that. And also go ahead and set the selected item to be nil, kind of like reset it again. All right, let's go ahead and build it. And let's go ahead and run this and see that if we try to check item number 2, item number 3 or something, does it get removed or not? And you can see it kind of gets removed instantly, right? And that is not what we want. What we want to do is to give the user a little bit of a delay and an opportunity so the user can uncheck the item if they don't want to delete it. So how can we create that kind of a delay? One of the ways that we can do that is we're going to go ahead and add a new file, and it's a utility file, and we will call it delay. And we're going to go ahead and create a class called delay. All right. Now, inside this, we're going to say that delay for how much. So we're going to go ahead and say delay for number of seconds. And when you're creating this, you don't really need to pass in the seconds because we will make sure that the default value is 2. And then we can simply go ahead and assign whatever seconds that you're passing. If you're passing, we'll assign it to the property. We'll also go ahead and create a work item. Now, this work item is something that we can go ahead and perform. All right, so what we're going to do inside over here, we will go ahead and create a function called perform work, where you can go ahead and pass in some sort of a closure that you want to get performed. So I'm going to go ahead and call it escaping, and it's a closure. It's not really going to return anything. So whatever work you want to perform, you can pass it as a closure. And now we can go ahead and construct this work item, which will be of type dispatch work item. We can go ahead and give it a block, and that block will be simply the work, which is the closure that you have actually passed in, this one. All right. And then finally, we can go ahead and perform dispatch queue.main.async after, and one of the async after is the one that takes in and execute the dispatch work item. So we can go ahead and say over here now plus the number of seconds and execute the work item. Work item is already defined. It's not going to be null, so we can go ahead and unwrap it. If you want to, or if the user wants to cancel it, we can go ahead and say cancel. And we can say work item.cancel. So this will be our first implementation. Now let's go ahead and see that how we can actually use this approach, or how we can integrate it with our application. So this is the part that where we are actually deleting the item, right? So what we can do is we can delay that. We can say, first of all, we will create an instance of the delay. So somewhere on the top, we will go ahead and say delay equals to delay. And once we have the instance of the delay, we can go ahead and say delay.perform work. And whatever work that we want to perform, that we want it to be delayed, we can just put it right there. Okay, so if the selected item is nil, then we will go ahead and probably go ahead and cancel it. So delay.cancel. Okay, so this is our first implementation. Let me go ahead and run this and see that how will it work. All right, so we're going to run it on an iPhone simulator. You can run it on Xcode preview. That is also perfectly fine. Okay, so all the items are being displayed. I'm going to say item 3, and I'm going to check it off. I don't want to delete it. So just before 2 seconds, because default is 2 seconds, I'm just going to take it off. Item 3, right? So that's what we're trying to delete. So keep in mind that we are doing item 3, and I keep taking it off. I keep changing my mind, and I'm canceling it basically. So you can see that looks like it's working perfectly fine. Let's go and move to different items. There we go. So after this, what we have done is that we have implemented, but let's see what happens. If I go ahead and say item 3 is actually removed. So you can see that we have added the functionality to perform the work and to remove the item. Now, if I go ahead and just check this and constantly checking in, checking off, checking in, checking off. So by checking in and checking off before 2 seconds, it works correctly. Now, if I go ahead and select item number 3 and don't check off, then it gets deleted or removed. So now we have successfully implemented delay to delete functionality in our application. Hope you enjoy it.